Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 108 of ThROH The Years, the podcast that reviews Ring of Honor, show by show from the beginning. My name is Trevor Dane, and joined as always by the co-host, Matt Feuerstein. And Matt, I was just thinking today, like, a lot of podcasts do like that. They'll just talk about general off-topic things for like the first 5 to 30 minutes of the show. I'm like, we don't usually do that. And then before the show, some great Matt lore, as the kids like to say, and I don't think we'll be saying it on the air, but we had a good preamble before this episode.
Yeah, you know what?
Some exciting revelations.
You know, we're sparing the listeners of our personal drama. You know, I get it. People like the banter of their favorite hosts and stuff, but I feel like, you know, for the most part, we're business-minded gentlemen who like to get down to business, right? This is the most businessy people listen to this podcast, and we're here to give you the business. And that's why we're introducing our new Cameo right now. If anyone wants us to give you personalized business, you can pay us $1,000, and we will do a Cameo for you.
We are going to get so much business from the likes of Explosive Dragon Farts, which is as you noted to me in delight in recent months, was the actual username. And believe me, that is fart spelled with a Z of someone that is now following us on YouTube. So that's the kind of fans we attract on this show. And we're proud to have them, man.
And we're going to get paid $1,000 by them to do a cameo. We're going to say, Explosive Dragon Farts, get with the program. Happy birthday.
Congratulations on your son's bris, Explosive Dragon.
Happy birthday. Congratulations on your son's bris. And get it together, man. Right? Because we're here to give him the business, right? We gotta be harsh and tough, and that's our brand, right? That's why people listen, because we're so harsh and tough.
Yeah, definitely all the tough love and angry rants. This is definitely the show, and
we're here for the angry rants, yeah. Anyway, Cameo, it's live. Pay us $1,000.
I'm sure there has to be someone that charges $1,000 on Cameo, right?
Yeah, us.
My hobby used to be, although I actually know there are people like, I believe there are people like, this is crazy. I've heard stories of people that will sign up for Cameo and they'll go like, I want to charge this much, and Cameo will go, we don't think you should charge that much. Like, we're not going to let you set that price. Like Cameo will apparently judge you. So like, what would Cameo deem us? They'd be like, we don't think more than $2.50 for Cameo. I'm
going to tell you, Trevor. Cameo would not let us go on.
I'm being presumptuous. But
we are. I am not no one's ever heard of me. You do have 15,000 Twitter followers, so I guess there's a chance they might let you go on for like $10. I don't know, but I feel like your claim to fame is purely Twitter, and I'm not famous at all. So, I don't know. But listen, it's $1,000. Trevor will get 700. I'll get 300. I think it's fair.
Oh, 50-50.
Well, all right. So, all right, I'll take it. It's very generous of you, but thank you so much. I'll take it.
50 cents and 50 cents.
How about we do? I get 700 and you get 300. Since you're so famous, you probably have all kinds of revenue streams that are open to you.
In incredible revenue streams, my God.
See, instead of doing banter about our lives and general topic, we just did a whole bit about Cameo, and that's why you listen.
Exactly. You certainly don't listen for the review of the show today, which would be Chi-Town Struggle.
So, yeah, and this Chi-Town Struggle episode of ThROH The Years will not be a struggle for you to get to, because we promise to be as entertaining as ever. Oh, wait, that's bad.
But it took place June 24th, 2006 at the Frontier Fieldhouse in Chicago Ridge, Illinois, in front of a reported crowd of 900 fans. And Matt, believe it or not, it was actually not the biggest wrestling show held in Chicago that day, because according to The Observer, and I will quote Meltzer, one of the reasons the crowd in Chicago was down on June 24th was that 10 minutes away, Pro Championship Wrestling ran a show with Bret Hart appearing, which apparently drew a huge crowd, outdrawing ROH. And I actually, Matt, did some research. I found a live report of the show. It might have been provided from Pro Championship Wrestling, so take this with a grain of salt. But they claimed that their show with a Bret Hart special appearance drew 1,100 fans, so 200 more than Ring of Honor.
Doesn't sound so far-fetched. Did you notice the sign in the audience that said, they might have Bret, but we're here for ROH?
Yeah, I was going to point that out. Yeah, it's rare even to see a fan with any sign at a Ring of Honor show. And yeah, you could see a fan that literally said that. And I looked at the card for the show. It was pretty much mostly wrestlers I had never heard of before. Sabu made a guest appearance.
Wait, you've never heard of Sabu?
Well, other than that, Danny Doring apparently no-showed.
The Terry Brunk?
I saw him with a picture with Hook this week, and Taz made a funny retweet where he just put a period with the picture to denote that he was probably unhappy in a jovial manner.
Did I tell you about the time? Did I tell you about the time in 2009 where I walked by the Hollywood Walk of Fame and I saw that Sabu had a star? And then, of course, I looked it up, and there was an old, famous, there was an old actor from the 20s or 30s named Sabu, but it was pretty funny.
Do you think Sabu deserves? Sabu definitely deserves a cameo. Sabu probably has a cameo, right?
If Sabu doesn't have a cameo, he could have a cameo. But I wonder if they would let him charge $1,000.
Probably, I imagine with Sabu, maybe at most, I'm going to guess a $150 cameo. I'm not sure. But either way, another note we get to before the start of the show, Figure 4 Weekly, Brian Alvarez, he wrote this note, and we will get to both of these instances as we review the show. Brian wrote, rough crowd at this Ring of Honor show as they threw bottles a la TNA when they were unhappy, and during some chants, another section of the crowd chanted, shut the fuck up at the people chanting. And we will cover both those things as we get to the show. But
shut the fuck up at people chanting is not that unusual at these shows. I've been to several where that happened. Throwing the bottles was unusual, and I definitely noticed it. And yeah, it's not good. I think, and we could talk about it later, but I think Meltzer said in a recent review that that you cited, them encouraging people to throw toilet paper, I think opened up a bit of a can of worms.
Yeah, a real bag of garbage. I was trying to think of something clever about what do bottles come in? I guess sometimes you can buy a 24-pack of bottles that might be in a
They opened up a real 24-pack of bottles.
And then finally, before we get to the show, we actually got to see there was 3 pre-show matches, and thankfully Chris Vetter sent a live report to the Pro Wrestling Torch, and he actually did a very rare thing, which we don't usually see with these pre-show live reports, which is he actually, Green Lantern fan style, timed out these matches. And I was kind of interested with all these matches incredibly short. So even beyond the pre-show, if you're unknown, you do not get much time generally on a Ring of Honor show. So we'll go to pre-show match 1. Josh Abercrombie defeated Rhett Titus in 4 minutes, 14 seconds. Chris wrote, solid match. Good match for Josh. He deserves another look. Then he just writes, Boz defeats Alex Sugarfoot Payne. I'm going to assume that's Ryan Boz, the indie wrestler, in 2 minutes, 37 seconds.
I think it's Brian Bosworth.
And
he was Boz, right? They called him Boz? They definitely called him Boz.
And then our final pre-show match,
wow,
Venom,
you're selling my Brian Bosworth reference. I'm
going to be honest, I barely remember who Brian Bosworth is.
Oh, well, you better look him up because his haircut in the 80s, very distinctive.
In our final pre-show match, Venom, Mike Walker defeats CJ Otis and Bobby Dempsey in 4 minutes, 33 seconds. Chris Vetter writes, they blew a lot of spots considering this was just 4 minutes. So, but amazing that none of these matches get over, 4.5 minutes. And I wonder if this is just because they were in the Midwest, how much of it is just that, or how much of this is maybe a Dave Prazak influence, because Josh Abercrombie, Ryan Boz, not Bosworth, and CJ Otis were all regulars in IWA Mid-South at this time. So I wonder if this was maybe even Dave Prazak saying, hey, let's try and get some guys some bookings, give them a shot. None of these guys really catch on in Ring of Honor at all, but no matter. We will get to the show we actually got to see, and it starts like the show the night before. This is the second half of a double shot. When, like the show last time, we open once again with the Ring of Honor students sitting on the bleachers before the show, except Bobby Dempsey informs us that this time they asked for the promo time, unlike last night when it was Shane Hagedorn who requested it. And they basically all just needle Shane Hagedorn and make fun of him for losing last night. Shane is angry. He responds that he will find another partner tonight, and it isn't going to be any of them still. He's going to beat those Christs tonight. So just a little bit of symmetry from the last show. And in fact, that will be kind of we will bookend the show with another amazing students and Hagedorn promo.
Yeah, so on the last show, you sort of complained that like that match felt super random, the Hagedorn versus Chris tag. But they, you got to admit they put in some effort to make it not seem random at this point. They're building a little story around it. So that's something to their credit.
Yeah, it's something that Ring of Honor we've been talking about. They've been doing a bit more frequently with these double shots. Well, they'll do these little storylines that will basically just be for the double shot, like that Jimmy Jacobs has to win this weekend, or, Lacey will leave him and he loses the first night and wins the second night. Like these little mini stories, which is, as they're doing more double shots, it's a nice way to try and at least give you a little bit of more connective tissue. So next we have Colt Cabana outside in the sun, creating a very washed out picture. And Colt talks about being in his hometown tonight, where he's played sports, where he lays his head. He says he's here to wrestle for the Ring of Honor World title, and says he came into Ring of Honor in 2002 as a nobody. Someone CM Punk brought along for a good time, maybe for a laugh, and he worked his way up. He worked his way hard, and the people took a liking to him. And at this point, he starts recapping like a lot of his big matches with Ring of Honor. He in Chicago. He recaps the night he and Punk won the tag titles in Chicago against the Briscoes, which he calls a defining moment in his career. He says Chicago is the place where he beat CM Punk in Punk's farewell match in Ring of Honor, which Colt calls one of the greatest, most emotional nights in his life. I wonder if he would still feel that way, because, it still was a special night, but I imagine feelings about some of the people may have changed a bit. But he goes, that's where
what are you talking about, Trevor? You're going to have to explain this right from the beginning. Explain it real slow like.
You're slow and sultry. He says where he had a crazy steel cage match with Austin Aries. It's where he bled buckets of his own blood fighting Homicide. And when I was rereading my notes as I transcribed this, I was like, I like that he emphasized buckets of his own blood, like, as opposed to when he bled buckets of someone else's blood, which I guess would be possible if you had like a blood transfusion right before a match. You could say, I bled buckets of someone else's blood, but he got to the point where he finally got to wrestle Bryan Danielson for the world title in Philly, and there was so much steam behind him, so much momentum after the Homicide feud, and he lost in 5 minutes. And he says that put the thought in his head that maybe he's not the best wrestler in the world, but he's worked and trained hard to get back to this point, get to this rematch. And Colt, now yelling at this point in the promo, pulls out an old Dusty Rhodes line saying tonight he reserves the stratosphere for him and Bryan Danielson. So I don't. Oh, go on.
I mean, we watched a lot of like serious Cabana promos during the Homicide feud, and our reviews were mixed at best. I thought this was the best serious Cabana promo I've ever seen. I thought this was a legitimately great promo.
I think there was one, I forget which specific one, but I remember really liking one of the almost during the Homicide feud in a way. Maybe I didn't quite, but this was a pretty good Colt Cabana promo, and I really liked, maybe this appeals more to us because we're nerds who are rewatching and like excessively documenting every one of these shows, but like I liked Colt, actually taking that stroll down memory lane where I was like, yeah, he has had a lot of big matches in Chicago, and that kind of made this match seem more important too, where he's kind of just tying it together with, oh yeah, like this is where he won the tag titles. It is where he fought Punk in their last match. That cage match with Aries was pretty darn good.
And I liked how he built to the climax in that promo where he got louder and louder and more intense. And that final line where he was like, you might be the best in the world, but I'm going for the stratosphere. I think that's a great line. Like, it's corny, but I thought it was really good. I really was impressed by this promo because he does not do a lot of serious promos, and this one hit for me.
And this is probably like the time in Colt Cabana's career where he was like pushed the most as like a serious, he was still allowed to be Colt and do comedy, but even still off of the Homicide feud, he is still getting to main event in Chicago for the world title. Like, he is still being portrayed. He's kind of in some ways the fill-in CM Punk, where he is now the guy in one of the major markets for Ring of Honor at this point.
Yeah, this was definitely the point in his career where I felt like the most like he had this upside to be a really big star. I feel like this was the moment where I was the most bullish on his prospects.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it, because I think for most of Colt's career, a lot of people would say, oh, he's a good like undercard guy, good utility guy who, he can occasionally main event, he can be up and down the card. But I feel like this is the one time in his career on the indies, at least, where you really felt like maybe there's more, or maybe we're
Yeah.
going to find out.
Right.
And that brings us to the opening match. Irish Airborne of Dave and Jake Christ defeated Shane Hagedorn and his tag partner, another IWA Mid-South alumni who would have a few matches in Ring of Honor this year, Trick Davis. And Irish Airborne won in 7:23 when Jake Christ pinned Davis after they did the Irish Airborne did their usual top rope, double stomp, Death Valley Driver on the knees combo. Matt, how do you think this stacked up to the Irish Airborne Shane Hagedorn mystery partner match from the last show?
So I was definitely, the high vote on that match with the night before with Keith Walker instead of Trick Davis. I just thought that match just told a simple story and was executed smoothly. I think this match wasn't as good in that aspect, but it definitely was more dynamic. Like, they did more cool stuff, so it was probably more entertaining. It also had a hotter crowd, which makes sense because Chicago, always has a hot crowd. But so that helps. And I think Trick Davis definitely fits in this mix more than Keith Walker does. But they start out with Davis, with Dave and Trick. They do some fun arm drag stuff. That's one of the Irish Airborne's trademarks. They do wacky arm drags off the ropes and stuff. And eventually Hagedorn tags himself in, and then Dave tags out to Jake, because that's just a thing that you do in ROH tag matches in this era, where you start out with two guys and then both guys tag out. I still don't understand why that's such a trope in ROH. I don't feel like I've noticed that in other tag team wrestling promotions, but it's just something they do in ROH. I don't know. But they do some cool stuff, like the Jake. They do a. Dave hits a baseball slide drop kick through the ropes to the outside. Trick Davis follows up with a tope to Dave. Dave comes at them with a flip dive over the top rope onto Davis and Shane. And then back in the ring, Shane is immediately in control, which doesn't exactly make sense since the Christs had the last offensive move. Sometimes that feels like an oversight to me, where they do a dive to the outside and then the guy who gets dove on is in control. So what was the point of the dive? I don't know. But, Shane does his run up to the back of the head stomp, gets a 2 count on that. There's kind of an awkward rope running spot with Dave and Trick with Davis hitting a forearm to Dave's head and then tagging in Shane. And then things slow down. You got, for the second night in a row, Hagedorn choking Dave with his boot over the bottom rope, although I did not notice as many funny faces this time. I don't know if I just missed them. But I like that most of Shane's covers, by the way, involve he covers guys at this point in an interesting way, where he sort of straddles the guy over the legs instead of just a lateral press. It's something different, and it kind of makes sense. So I like that. To have a signature way of covering somebody, I think helps you stand out a little bit. At one point, Davis hits a Rana and then a swing around. I don't know how do you describe it. A swing around butterfly lock on Jake Christ. And Dave breaks that up with a kick to Trick's back and knocks Shane to the floor. And that's when they do the head stomp, Death Valley Driver over the knees for the pin. Yeah, I'd call it a push, because the match the night before I think was smoother. This match had more cool stuff, but flowed worse. So I would say they ended up being about equally decent and equally not particularly good.
Yeah, I thought this was better than the Hagedorn Irish Airborne tag from the night before, but I completely agree with your general review in the sense that this was much more about the action. It was more fast. It was faster paced, had more exciting spots, but yeah, maybe there was a little bit more ugliness, less of a story. And like you said, there were a couple ugly spots, particularly that thing you mentioned where Trick Davis throws what looks like he's throwing an elbow super high so that Dave is probably supposed to duck under, but instead Dave still kind of just runs into it with his forehead, and it looks kind of awkward. But for the most part, in a 7-minute match, that you got a nice dive train, like you mentioned, and some nice spots, and it was a perfectly fine, I would say a high average, perfectly fine way to start the show. It's not a barn burner, it's not memorable, but it was enjoyable enough, and the Irish Airborne are really over in whenever they seem to do the Midwest. Like there was a pretty big Irish airborne chant before this match starts, and a huge chant for them after the match. And it seems wherever they're in, obviously they're from Ohio, so wherever they're in Ohio and then Chicago, seems like they get a bit of an extra boost. One thing that I noted at the start of this match, that one of my big Ring of Honor criticism, this is another show, Matt, where they did not white balance the two cameras, which means when you watch the hard cam, anytime they show an angle from the hard cam, looks completely normal. And then anytime they show the ringside, like handheld cam, there's a yellow tint to the video because they've not balanced out. So it's one of those things you get used to once you watch a bunch of the show, but man, that always really annoys me. Like it's one of the basic things, like just, you're only using two cameras. Like, just balance them so that they both look the same. But
at least it's been a long time. At least it's been a long time since we've had a show where the lighting was so bad that you couldn't see anything. So it's an improvement. By the way, since you mentioned this wasn't a barn burner, I just realized, you know how the Briscoes had that fight on the farm a few years ago? They should have called that match a barn burner. Would have been.
If they ever had done like a Briscoes Kane and Undertaker match. If the Briscoes ever made it to WWE, that would have been the perfect place for a barn burner. Just like some kind of Inferno outdoors match. Really innovating.
Yeah,
but
we are very innovative. That's why we're charging so much on Cameo.
Well, you treated that like you had mentioned Brian Bosworth, and now I know how you feel. But anyway.
That's right.
It's okay. I don't know why I'm in a giggly mood today, but next
it's the gas you were given at the dentist.
Yeah, for those who don't know, I am coming off a dentist appointment yesterday, but I am 92%, so we will continue. Next, we have the embassy of Jimmy Ray, Prince Nana, Daisy Hayes, and yes, Alex Shelley backstage, and what I believe is Alex Shelley's final appearance in Ring of Honor for quite a while until he comes back for a guest shot as part of the Motor City Machine Guns. Jimmy asks Alex Shelley, is he going to be okay for the match tonight? Because I guess tonight's match was supposed to be Jimmy and Shelley versus the Briscoes. Shelley says, you know that feeling you have when you have an erection in the morning and you roll over way too fast? And Prince Nana immediately adds incredibly enthusiastically, he's like, yeah, I do know that feeling. And Shelley goes, well, I have that feeling, but in my shoulder. And Shelley at this point says he's been training with the Ghana World Cup football team. It's been taking a toll on his AC joint. He says he thinks Jimmy should find another partner tonight. Daisy at this point suggests she should step in as the partner, and Nana says he needs her for protection on the outside. Shelley says, you can't do this match, Daisy. Like, you'd make this match too easy. So instead he says, I found somebody else, and he brings in CK3. In another moment, I love Prince Nana immediately says when he sees CK3, who's this? To a guy who has worked multiple Ring of Honor shows, including the night before. But then Nana quickly seems to realize, because he goes, oh, this is the gentleman you've told me about from last night. And Shelley says CK3 is going to have to learn to do the embassy hand gesture. They quickly teach him how to do it, the little pyramid type thing. Nana says if he can do that gesture, CK3 can ride with the embassy. So apparently that's all that it takes, Matt. Shelley then says, looking good so far. So I just love the enthusiasm. And then, Matt, this was awesome. When I watched this, I put this segment up on Twitter a week or two ago on my Twitter feed, which we'll plug at the end of the show. I just thought this stable was so much fun. This, I guess, is in some ways the last gasp for this iteration of the stable. In terms of, I think, Matt, in terms of Ring of Honor history, I don't think there's ever been an act that was funnier on a more consistent basis over a longer period of time than this little run of the Alex Shelley embassy.
Yeah, and they were really hitting their stride on promos those last few months when Shelley wasn't around as much because of the injuries and stuff. So it's kind of like almost like a missed opportunity, or in some ways it's like what could have been.
This is one of those acts where I think, a lot of acts I would not say this for, but this is one of those Ring of Honor acts where I think they actually would have been more successful if they had been in like WWE or TNA, and gotten just a mid-card level push, but allowed to do these kind of backstage segments. I think they would have really gotten a following and being able to do it every week rather than just, like for 1 minute on the occasional DVD release. I think that kind of comedy, they would have become real fan favorites. But
for sure. I mean,
yeah.
For sure, they probably would have had to turn babyface at one point.
Yeah, and so in fact, Alex Shelley did still have the PW Torch rights that Alex Shelley was unable to wrestle on this show due to a shoulder injury. So apparently that part was legitimately a real injury. No word on if it feeling like it feels when you roll on an erection in the morning. We have no confirmation of that. I did a lot of research, Matt, a lot of research, and I could not confirm that. But that brings us to the second match of the show. Roderick Strong defeats Jimmy Jacobs, escorted to the ring by Lacey via submission in 15 minutes, 3 seconds when he made Jacobs tap out to the stronghold. I thought this was pretty good, but nothing too special. I thought, like, if I had to give it a star rating, 3.25 to 3.5 undercard match. I thought they gave these guys plenty of time. They worked hard throughout. They gave you plenty of action. I kind of felt about this match, Matt, I think kind of like you felt on the Kento Roderick Strong match the night before, although not as good as that match. But it's just that there wasn't that. I felt was kind of feeling like there's not that one final gear that they ever hit that they could have gotten to in this match. They kind of stay in that second to last gear for a long time. But on one hand, I kind of thought, well, should I really expect more from the second match on a card? Because a match of this quality on the second match on a card is pretty good. But then I thought, on the other hand, I guess I was kind of expecting more because I like Jimmy Jacobs, and I generally expect more when you see Roderick Strong gets a 15-minute singles match. You really think, oh, he's going to really blow the doors off. There isn't much story here. Early on, it looks like we're going to get more of a lighthearted back in Jimmy Jacobs, where he's going to go back to being kind of distracted by Lacey, and Roddy's really early on kind of not taking him seriously, really just laughing him off. But they very quickly cut that out and proceed to have a very serious match for the rest of it. And it's interesting. I feel like more than anything, this weekend for Jimmy Jacobs felt almost like it was kind of like a test run of how seriously Gabe could push him, because he's getting over with the Jimmy Loves Lacey, the music video and all that. But you look at this weekend, he got to go do the three-way world title match with Danielson and Whitmer on the last show, and he got to be the final two with Danielson and have like basically a 10-minute singles match with Danielson. And then here he's getting 15 minutes to go with Roddy in a singles match. So to me, this weekend kind of feels like I could see Gabe thinking like, okay, you've got a character that's over. Let's see how well you can do in the ring if I just throw you in the deep end of the pool, put you with like two of the very best workers, give you a bunch of time, let you have real competitive matches. And I think he does pretty well. Watching this Jacobs in this match, I would say is he kind of reminds me of something I've talked about with CM Punk, although I would certainly not put Jacobs even like him on the level of CM Punk as a wrestler. But like he's another guy who he works really hard, but watching him, you can see every gram of that effort he puts into the match. Like, he doesn't make things look effortless or easy, and I don't necessarily think that's a flaw at all. Sometimes it's a strength for wrestlers, but I think when I was watching this match, I really noticed, like, Roderick Strong, he makes working a match like this, like, just look like another day in the office, where I felt like Jimmy Jacobs kept up, but just watching, it looked like it's taking, like, everything Jacobs has to kind of, like, keep up with Roderick Strong and match him. But still, I thought a good match. Just there wasn't that one thing that really made it ultra memorable.
Yeah, it's funny, like, the way you frame it, because my rating of this match would be pretty similar to yours, like 3.5, 3 3/4. But like whereas for you, that's like, oh, it's all right. Like for me, that's like, oh wow, this match is like a hidden gem. Like, wow, I can't believe how good this was. Because like you said, this is the second match on the show. And I don't remember it at all, so I didn't expect much from it. They tend not to have great matches the second match of the show, no matter who it is. And I think they really, they worked 15 minutes, they went hard. Jacobs, while he's still playing up Jimmy Loves Lacey, he's definitely getting more serious, and definitely giving it his all, like you said. Roderick was totally on point here. Everything that he did looked good. His chops were on point. I thought it told a good story. Jimmy trying to keep up with Roderick. Roderick gave him a lot more offense than I expected. And yeah, I thought this was really fun. I also, the crowd was good, which also makes a difference. They kept out a really good pace. I don't know. This was better than I expected, and not because I don't think these guys could have a better match with each other, but because their position on the card and the way the crowd responded to it, and the way that I think it continued to elevate Jacobs at a time when he needed that elevation. He could have very easily become a comedy player at this point, and he didn't. Like, he he is and he isn't. Like, they're letting him have credibility as a wrestler. And I think Roderick was very generous here to Jacobs, just like Danielson was generous the night before. So yeah. I think that, I don't know, that made me have a very positive, positive reaction to this match. I thought it was very good. I think if they wanted to like go all out, like PWG style and just do everything they could probably have a 4-star plus match, but that's not what they were going for here. And I think they hit the high end of what they were going for.
And I do think it's a good point you make about the crowd, because I do think this was Chicago really by this point had become like one of the better reacting and bigger in like more on a regular basis crowds period that Ring of Honor of all their markets. And I thought this was another, like you said, they were very loud for this match. They were pretty loud for the opener too, but particularly when Roddy wins the match where he does the stronghold after the 2 half Nelson backbreakers, the crowd just roars when he puts him in the stronghold, like to a surprising degree. So yeah, this crowd, we'll get to it. They were kind of a spicy crowd. In fact, during this match, again, another thing that really dates this era of wrestling, when Jacobs uses the Death Valley driver, the fans start chanting Cena sucks. Like, this was the era of where I guess the Cena hate was really at a peak. It's amazing
this was right after One Night Stand, where the whole we're gonna burn the entire building down because we hate Cena so much was like the vibe in that building. So I think hating Cena was at peak this particular month.
It's funny, like that even made it into like Dave Meltzer's like recap from all the live reports. Like that was notable, like just people don't like Cena. That was remember all those huge debates, and now we just kind of accept that like, oh yeah, John Cena was a pretty darn good wrestler and a big star.
Yeah, I mean, I think if my recollection is accurate, Cena really won over the I guess by lack of a better word, smart mark crowd in 2007. He had his match with Umaga, his matches with Shawn Michaels, his some of the matches with Orton. Like, he had a lot of great matches that year, and I think that's when people were like, all right, the Cena hate is ridiculous. He's awesome,
And next we go backstage to join someone that's been in the news with Ring of Honor in the modern times lately at the week that we record this, who had just signed a deal with the Tony Khan Ring of Honor. Nigel McGuinness is backstage here. He wonders when us internet monkeys are going to learn. He's been on the Ring of Honor wrestling website, and he sees that people think he's going to be the first of the current champs in ROH to lose their title. Or at least I think Nigel meant to say that. Instead, he says that the fans think he's going to be, quote, the first person to lose this belt, unquote, which is literally impossible without a time machine, because he is not the first person to hold the pure title.
Well, I think inherent in that poll was, do you think there's going to be a time machine invented?
Boy, the things we could change in wrestling with a time machine. But
that's definitely the main use that we would have for the time machine. We should make a Back to the Future spin-off, or not spin-off, but like take off, where like we it's just a guy going back to change wrestling angles and finishes.
That is still the best from the old Figure 4 site, the Brian Vase show. I mean, it's weird to laugh about one of the people involved now, but that was still one of the all-time classic bits where Vinny and Brian came up with an idea of the time that Chris Benoit lost to Orlando Jordan very quickly on SmackDown, and the idea that Chris Benoit would invent a time machine just so he could have a rematch with Orlando Jordan where he would potentially not lose that quickly. Nowadays, I think if you were going to create a time machine to correct a Chris Benoit-related thing, that might not be the top thing anymore.
Yeah, it would probably be one of those, part of that Booker T Best of 7 series, right? That's what we would choose.
Exactly.
No, but seriously, maybe that's a new list them and learn concept, is top 10 things you would change in wrestling with a time machine.
So many. You'd have to just disqualify, like, tell people to not do drugs. Like that would, you could make a list that would just be those 10.
Yeah, I bet you they would listen, right? Just like random guy.
Yeah, definitely.
Who's dressed in who has a haircut that seems pretty dorky by 1980s standards. Is going to tell me how to have fun? Who wants me to play what? Video games? What? The Atari 2600? That's what this kid wants me to do? Instead of going out and partying and getting laid on while getting high on cocaine. I don't know if this dork from the future has my best interest at heart.
Only AJ Styles would have taken that advantage. He would have tried to feign. Could you imagine like AJ Styles trying to figure out a way so he could rig up like some adapter to put a CRT TV working off a cigarette lighter and then an Atari so he could play in the back seat or something? Because wasn't AJ Styles like the original guy who was like, yeah, I have a system so I can like, I got a little LCD TV in my suitcase so I can play this PlayStation 2 on the bus. So I could just imagine AJ Styles being the one guy that would have listened to your not drugs video games argument in the 1980s. But
yeah, unfortunately he was a child, so really wouldn't have been relevant.
So Nigel brags about beating CK3 the night before, calling him, quote, one of the best area guys from Michigan, unquote. Nigel tells the fans to touch their little keyboards, watch their Star Trek, play Dungeons & Dragons to their heart's content. Homicide isn't winning his first ROH title from him tonight, no matter how much the fans vote. And I love, this is one of my little things I get a thrill from Ring of Honor in this era, which was another thing that really dates this era of Ring of Honor, which is occasionally you would get a promo where the wrestlers would reference a recent poll happening on the Ring of Honor message board. And I just think like, don't really do a lot of polls these days anymore. But that used to be a thing that like the wrestlers, and I think probably even Gabe would look like, they would just be like, here's a poll, like who should have the match tonight? You know, who should do this? And so literally having a champion making a whole promo, getting angry at the results of an online poll. Classic.
Yeah, you know,
but
I find it charming.
It is. Again, it's like when you saw those early, like those clips of like the Ring of Honor offices, and you see like the old blocky like CRT computer monitor. You know, like I like that stuff. It takes me back to when I had hopes and dreams, Matt. But that brings us to the Briscoes, Jay and Mark, defeating Conrad Kennedy III, CK3, and Jimmy Rave, scored to the ring by Alex Shelley, Daisy Hayes, and Prince Nana. The Briscoes win in 12:56 when Mark Briscoe pinned CK3 after he hit the cutthroat driver. Matt, what'd you think about this match? Especially, this is another match where a crap ton of toilet paper gets thrown in for the entrance. This happens, of course, during every Jimmy Rave match. But Dave Prazak on commentary calls it maybe the most toilet paper ever for the Embassy. I don't know. My memories of quantifying amounts of toilet paper is not good. It was put to the test during the pandemic, but it is one of the biggest showers of toilet paper we've seen thus far.
I feel like it was the biggest that we've seen. I described it as epic, and also I wrote that it was insane. Like it doesn't stop. Like even during Nana's pre-match promo, they're throwing more and more toilet paper. It's a lot of toilet paper.
They do not effectively clear it up. Like there's still little scraps of paper in the ring when the match starts.
Yeah, and I think it pretends to some of the like rowdiness of the crowd later. Like they just want to throw shit. Like it's very interesting. The Briscoes got a huge reaction for their return to Chicago. The crowd is so hot in this first, part of this show. And I think that helps this match a lot too. Because in some ways this was a weird match. Because the Briscoes are working babyface, which they're not babyfaces. But obviously they're against bigger heels, so they're working babyface. Also, it's not a squash match, but they are very dominant here. Like a huge portion of this match is them on offense. But the pace is really breakneck. And I really enjoyed that. Like it was just, this wasn't a great match, but it was a lot of fun to watch. Like, they do some fun early wrestling with CK3. Mark kicks him right in the face when he's gloating. Rave, he does a bit more stalling than he did the night before in that four-way, but it's not like excessive stalling like we've seen other times. At one point, Jay taunts Rave and Rave spits in his face, so Jay just beats the crap out of him and the Briscoes beal him across the ring, and then they double team launch him into the air. So I just wrote, it is fun watching them be baby faces. But Jay goes flying over the top rope with a leaping clothesline on CK3, and Mark hits the shooting star press. And the Briscoes are just on fire, until Rave cuts off Jay with a clothesline when Jay goes for a dive. But he's not off offense for long. He does a Rana, an elbow. Briscoes, they work over Rave in the corner and do some more of their cool combos. it's interesting because the Briscoes are like almost getting the heat on Rave, even though they're the baby faces here. Um, I just noted here in this ROH tag matches. I mean, I don't know if you feel the same way as me, but like, aren't ROH tag matches just kind of weird? Like during this era, like the psychology of these matches is just very non-traditional. I don't know if that's something that you've picked up on also, but like I find it. Sorry.
No, I was just gonna say, like, just like going to your point earlier, the Briscoes now being in this position where they're kind of the baby faces because no one's going to be a heel against the Embassy at this point. When you just did the night before and are going to do later in the night, like these heat getting, or at least trying to get heat angles where they're attacking, Aries and Strong and Kenta, like. Yeah, it's kind of a weird booking choice, but I'm part of my thought is just maybe Gabe just thought, I'm on a run right now where I'm trying to get the Briscoes a bunch of tag wins because I'm wanting to build them up for, the third Aries and Strong tag title challenge. And at this point, there were almost no dedicated tag teams in Ring of Honor. Like they originally booked this to be Rave and Shelley. Who else is a dedicated tag team other than Aries and Strong, Rave and Shelley kind of at this point, and Irish Airborne?
Yep.
I don't think there is another one.
That's it. That's it. Which is interesting because it's like, in some ways, it's the strongest tag team division they've had just because Aries and Strong are good champions and the Briscoes are there, but it's still very few tag teams. But yeah, so finally, Hayes jumps on the apron and kicks Jay in the head, so the Embassy gets to control it for a little while. Like CK3 is on the attack, and we hear Nana yelling at him to hit Jay harder. And eventually Jay just hits a big jumping boot for his comeback. So it's a very short heat segment, and they both tag out, and Mark gets to do his hot tag, which he hasn't gotten to do during this run because he hasn't been a babyface. And he's, it's still a good hot tag. We get CK3's pretty cool side lung blower thing, which is a move that I really like a lot. And Mark knocks Rave off the apron. The Briscoes double team CK3, and Jay holds CK3 up for a springboard spin kick by Mark. We actually get a chop battle between Jay and Jimmy Rave, and Jay does the military press into the Death Valley driver, and Mark hits the cutthroat driver on CK3 for the win. But like everything that I said, like it happens at a really, really good clip. So I just, even though this match had weird psychology and like didn't like amount to all that much in terms of drama, I thought it was just very entertaining watching the Briscoes do moves. And I think that was what the appeal of this match is.
Yeah, I agree. I thought this was a strong above average, and I thought both teams just brought to the table what they do well. Like, what really kind of hit home for me watching this match was the Briscoes at this point were one of like the best throwing big bombs acts on the indies. We're just like such a high percentage at this point of just their regular offense looks so cool. They had really cobbled together by this point in their careers, like on this second run, like a really great selection of signature offense that was athletic, modern, but yet in the execution, a lot of it still had a bit more of a weight and a menace to it than like a lot of other of their contemporaries. Like, you would watch them do like, the double tackle, or even just when they're coming off with the springboard heart attack variations and stuff. Like the Briscoes just feel like a little bit like harder hitting, even when they're doing very athletic, cool, modern indie offense.
It's crazy to me. It's crazy to me that WWE didn't sign them, like even well before that whole incident on Twitter. Like they were ready to be TV stars, I would say, within like a year of this, because their promos continue to get better, especially Jay's. Like you know what I mean? Like they didn't establish those like that Dem Boys characters that would make them just like iconic yet, but I feel like they could have been stars on WWE TV within a year or two of this if WWE was open to it.
Yeah, they were so polished, and that's a great point too. Is we were talking about like the stage of Colt Cabana's career was at the time of the show. Yeah, I think you nailed hit the nail on the head. Where like this is the point of Briscoe's career where like they've kind of are now finding like their wrestling was always great. It's even better in some ways now, and they're kind of finding they've changed their bodies where they've now grown from like gangly teenager bodies to like honkin muscular men bodies, and they
did you say honkin?
Big honkin. Big honkin masculine men bodies, Matt.
Okay,
It's a scientific term.
that term that everyone knows.
but they were, you could see in like tonight, like they're starting to do the man stuff, and they're definitely getting close. Like the promos are starting to, they're no longer a negative. They're not as much of a positive as they will be. But yeah, we're getting to the point where like if the Briscoes were like fruits on the vine, they're almost perfectly right now. They're on their way, and it's a cool point to see
fruits
them
on the vine.
Some big honkin' melons, Matt. But
So, are you saying the Briscoes have big boobs? Because I didn't notice those.
But I don't know what's going on with this episode. But but meanwhile, I feel like Rave and CK3 obviously they can't get with the Briscoes on cool offense. But I thought their old school kind of heel act, especially Rave likes to do, and CK3 is kind of a throwback wrestler. I think it plays really well here when you're seeing a team like the Briscoes where they're just doing so much cool stuff that like the more old school heel stuff kind of pops a bit more and you enjoy it more because whenever the Briscoes get on in control, you're seeing that fun action. So you're not going, oh, this is dragging the match down. It's more like, oh, just this old school heel touches. It's just adding like a bit of color to the match. So, like Rave spinning in Jay's face, it just immediately leads to a great run of Briscoe's ass kicking, the Daisy Hayes heel, interference. It adds a little bit of color. And even if something is like simple as like the CK3 putting in someone in a chin lock, normally in a different match, you might go, oh, this is kind of slow. This is kind of boring. But it's just setting up very quickly to another big run of the Briscoes going nuts on offense again. So I thought it worked really well in this match. And watching this match, I felt like CK3 probably would have been a better fit for the Embassy specifically than Ring of Honor as a whole. Like he seems like a perfectly fine, serviceable wrestler, but he's one of those guys where his gimmick is kind of a throwback, and really I feel that only would have fit in with the Embassy where Rave is already doing a lot of stalling. Like CK3 is a guy who in this match, like a lot of his offense is so basic. At one point in this match, he hits a body slam and then he celebrates. Like that's going to stick out in Ring of Honor unless you're in a very specific framing. And it's especially, it's interesting in the sense that, like you mentioned when we talked about the move last night, that lung blower variation that CK3 does, where he jumps on the guy's back, where he has kind of their own arm pulled across their neck, and then he flips them into the lung blower. And this is another night where like the crowd reacts really big. Like it's weird. Like CK3 is weird, where everything he does is very basic 80s throwback, and then he has this one really cool, really modern move that no one else does. And it's like it's like I want to see just a compilation of him doing this move in matches, because so many of these crowds that he does it in front of, the first time you see it, you're kind of lulling this thing off. Oh, he's just going to do very basic stuff. And then you see this one move and you can hear so many different crowds, even just in this double shot where they're like, holy shit, what the hell? He just did that? Like, what the hell was that? And I just thought very out of place, but in a cool way, I would say.
Yeah, I wonder if he used that as a finisher in promotions where they, let him win.
But so that was the match, and farewell, Alex Shelley. We will not see you for a long time. We will miss you.
But the next time we do see you, it will be in one of the most famous tag team matches in ROH history. So I'm looking forward to that.
And that brings us to Samoa Joe defeating Delirious via pinfall in 10 minutes, 57 seconds after he hit the Muscle Buster. And this was your 2006 mid-card Samoa Joe match. He is playing his hits at a kind of laid-back pace. And to be clear, I always say this, I don't blame him for this. He was at the point where he had just been going through some injury trouble. TNA was becoming his top priority. And to be fair, I think this match is a good, case study of why Joe had risen to the point in Ring of Honor where he's already kind of a legend in Ring of Honor to these fans, where he could just play the big hits and the fans would be perfectly happy with it, because he can get away with being Samoa Joe in Ring of Honor at this point instead of working like Samoa Joe, if that makes sense. Like an example would be the very start of this match where the bell rings, Delirious does his act where he runs all around outside the ring and just freaks out, jumps over and over, and he runs back in the ring, and Joe just stands like motionless the whole time. And then Delirious does this whole running around, and then he runs at Joe, and Joe just like raises his fist, and Delirious runs into it, and it gets a huge reaction. And as an example of just Joe can get a huge reaction just playing off his aura of he's the badass who's not going to play along with your games. He barely has to do anything at that point. And then most of this match is Joe being the crap out of Delirious. It's doing his standard spots. The most enjoyable parts of this match for me are the ones that stick out and play off the comedy of Delirious, like that opening bit, or Delirious at one point bites Joe's leg, and Joe does a really good sell. He's like, get him off me to the ref, like really good kind of screaming sell. Or they do a whole story throughout the entire match where Delirious tries to slam Joe over and over, and he can't, keep failing to the final attempt where he drops Joe, like maybe he only like drops him when Joe's like 2 inches off the mat. It's like an Andre the Giant slamming Hulk Hogan slamming Andre the Giant at WrestleMania 3, but it's a good little tease and delivery. But I always get a kick out of whenever a wrestler in Ring of Honor makes a big deal of like, oh, I can't, like they treat Samoa Joe like he's 600 pounds. Like he was a big guy, but whenever a wrestler acts like, oh, I can't, it's impossible to lift this guy off his feet. For some reason, I always get a little bit of a kick out of it because I feel like he's not that big, but I thought this match was good. It was, those few unique spots were fun. Joe, even on autopilot, I think can be fun. And I thought the ending was good. Delirious finally takes Joe off his feet after he hits a million clotheslines. And then Joe really teases that Delirious almost has him out cold with the dragon clutch before he makes his comeback. And so I enjoyed this match. It was not fantastic, but if Joe's going to be on autopilot, this is the kind of Joe on autopilot I can get behind.
Yeah, I agree with you. This was fun. It's these matches that are like a mix of comedy and then also like intensity are always a little bit weird, and we're going to see that even more dramatically in a later match on this show. But I liked because I mentioned this on the Throwdown review. The week before, Joe was in like uber intense, ultimate hard hitting badass Joe mode at In Your Face, and now he's like just totally like laid back, jovial Samoa Joe, and it's very interesting. Other than the one moment where he does the ST Joe in the corner on Delirious and yells "Die, motherfucker!" and that reminded me of the way he screamed at Green Lantern fan at In Your Face. Like I was like, Jesus, like that's a random bit of anger from Samoa Joe. But it is weird just to see because they do a lot of comedy here, and there's a lot of spots built around Delirious trying to body slam Joe like he's Hulk Hogan and Samoa Joe is Earthquake, like where they do a thing where he can't get him up, and then later on he picks him up and Joe falls on top of him and stuff like that. So that's unusual for a Samoa Joe match to just be like the big guy that the smaller guy wants to body slam. But it is a lot of Joe just doing offense and the crowd loving his offense. It's actually kind of similar to the previous match in that way, because that match was all about the Briscoes doing cool offense. This is about Joe doing his cool offense, although I think he definitely doesn't show as much intensity as the Briscoes did. And also, we've seen so much Joe that what it looks like when Samoa Joe is being 100% engaged in something, and this obviously wasn't that. But he's so charismatic, and Delirious has good momentum, so the match stayed entertaining the whole way. And by the end, even though Joe was easily the more popular of the two guys, the crowd did cheer on some of Delirious's hope spots near the end. When Delirious locks in the Cobra stretch near the end, the crowd is buzzing decently, although it still seems like they're rooting for Joe. Whenever Joe does his flurry of slaps, the crowd gets really into it. And, the ending came pretty abruptly, but that's probably appropriate for a match like this. They didn't want to do too much. So I would say this is overall a pretty good, pretty entertaining match, but not much more than that.
Yeah, it is a testament to how big of a legend on the Indies and in Ring of Honor Joe already was, where he had got to the point, which I imagine is like the dream for most wrestlers, where you're so over and your character so well established that you don't have to be 100% to like get really good reactions and send the crowd home happy. Because especially on the Indies, especially Ring of Honor, where there were such high expectations, I don't feel like there's a lot of pretty over wrestlers that I feel like couldn't even get away with that. Not that it's completely mailed in, but like the idea, I think that there's a lot of times in wrestling we're like, if this guy isn't doing 100%, why is he even here?
Yeah, although as we've
like,
established, I think the idea that ROH is just guys trying to have the best match possible every time, no matter where they are in the card, it's just not true. Like the spot on the card definitely influences the style of match that guys work. It's not, I think we're seeing more of that in 2006 than we did in 2005 in terms of people just going for it, but you still have that. All right, this is the third match. This is before intermission. They're not going to work a main event. You're still mostly getting that.
Couple other notes from this match. The Observer wrote, I don't think this made DVD, Matt. The Observer wrote, Samoa Joe put on a Chicago Cubs hat and got booed because the building is White Sox territory. So I like the idea of Joe, like, maybe like, this is really going to put me over the top. And they're like, boo.
He should have checked with Cabana or Ace Steel before he did that. By the way, I also noticed there was a "fuck Scott Steiner" chant. So I don't know if they were reacting to like a TNA storyline or if there was something that Steiner like said in a shoot interview or something about Joe. Because obviously I know they feuded in TNA, but I wasn't sure if there was something else beyond that.
Yeah, that was the other thing I was going to bring up. This is the era I believe he was feuding with Scott Steiner. So had he already cut? I mean, we would need a Garrett Kidney to answer this, or just someone with a better memory. But like, was this had Scott Steiner already cut the legendary "He's Fat" promo on Samoa Joe?
I'll just say this: if this ROH crowd was starting a chant to put over a TNA storyline, that would make me a little bit disappointed in them.
Well, I believe like at this point, Samoa Joe was having such a good run in TNA early on that I feel like if you're a Ring of Honor fan, I know I was still checking out like the big matches just because I wanted to see Joe and
I was too, but like their storylines still weren't like so good that I'd be like, fuck Scott Steiner in this work, like you're feuding with each other. So yay, Scott Steiner for working with Samoa Joe and putting him over.
Two most over heels on this Ring of Honor show, John Cena and Scott Steiner. So, after the match, Dave Prazak mentions that Joe is set to lead Team ROH into Cage of Death, a death before dishonor. That's the next show. Joe celebrates when the Necro Butcher hits the ring. The crowd chants for Joe to fuck him up, and the two look to be about to brawl when Claudio Castagnoli runs in. He chop blocks behind. Necro then puts the boots to him until BJ Whitmer and Adam Pearce show up in street clothes. They start to fight back. Nate Webb soon joins them with some barbed wire, and as Joe's being helped to the back, Ace Steel comes down, and here we go. We have a six-man tag that a cage match at least is labeled as a bunkhouse brawl. Claudio Castagnoli, Nate Webb, and Necro Butcher defeated Ace Steel, Adam Pearce, and BJ Whitmer in 7 minutes, 49 seconds when Necro Butcher pinned Whitmer after Claudio hit Whitmer in the head with a chair after they put a barbed wire halo on BJ Whitmer's head. So, yes, BJ Whitmer, the man that
Hillbilly Jesus indeed.
Yeah, the man that CM Punk used to call Hillbilly Jesus literally got the proverbial crown of thorns here. Matt, this is the fight. We've seen a lot of these kind of mid-card CZW versus Pierce, Whitmer, and Friends brawls. This is the last one we're ever going to see in Ring of Honor. How'd you think this is? If we're saying farewell to a chapter of Ring of Honor, Matt, what'd you think about this one?
Yeah, I mean, obviously these are super repetitive at this point, but I did think it was pretty fun. I think Nate Webb adds a different dimension to it. And I also, I mean, Hero wasn't there, so it's a different mix. Also, the highlight of the match came extremely early because someone in the crowd yelled to Necro, "Take a shower," and Necro just replied, "I don't need no shower, baby." And to me, that was the best part of the whole match. They brawl outside the ring pretty early. Pierce hits a very sloppy monkey flip, almost sending Claudio over the guardrail. And Steele hits a tope, and Claudio and Pierce are in the ring for like 10 seconds until Claudio throws him outside again. The announcers are not on commentary at the beginning. They're like, "Let's get out of here," but then they're back pretty quickly after maybe about 3 minutes, and they call the rest of the match. This would be a weird match to have no commentary.
This match never goes into the crowd.
Yeah, it is, but you know what? Good. I think we've seen a lot of that. So, but there's still a lot of chairs. They do the whole thing where they put the chairs together. Necro avoids being suplexed on them, and then Necro, of course, puts the chairs back to back. And Necro goes for a diamond cutter, but Pierce blocks and just backbreakers Necro on the backs of the two chairs. it's, that spot is crazy, but like Necro is just going to do that in every single match during this feud. Like it's a bit absurd, right? Like,
It
okay,
is
you don't have
literally
to, you don't have
his
to do it. You
Austin
don't have to do
Aries.
it always.
Yeah, like it is literally his Austin Aries, you can't head scissor me spot where it is so convoluted. Like you would think at some point in like, if this was real, Necro Butcher at some point after like the fourth time this backfires, maybe don't put two open chairs together in the ring because it never works out for you.
Yeah, no, definitely don't do it every time. So Necro puts Ace on a table and holds him there for Webb to come off through the top rope leg drop to the floor, putting him through the table. And then Pierce power slams Webb through that same table, which is always a crazy spot to me when you're like putting someone through a table that's already been broken. And, Whitmer hits a exploder on Claudio and he's bladed at this point. And then we get the barbed wire crown of thorns. Oh, and Necro pile drivers Whitmer. Whitmer and Necro fight over the barbed wire ring, and Necro then just struggles and puts it on Whitmer's head, and then you get the chair shot to the head, and Necro covers him for the pin. I thought that was actually a very cool finish, like the way they fought to get it on his head, and then that immediately basically neutralized Whitmer and made him vulnerable to the chair shot, and that was it. That was the finish. I like that it was nonstop action. It wasn't too long. It was only about 7 or 8 minutes. It wasn't boring. So I think this was one of the better ones of these we've seen in a while. I think this was pretty entertaining, and I think a good way to leave it before the final showdown, so to speak.
Yeah, I agree. This would be in the top third of these that we've seen. Obviously not like the legendary, 100th show match, but it's one of those things where I know if we had not watched every one of these, I would have enjoyed it more than I did. I still enjoyed it, but it's one of those things I always try and consider when I review things, which is, matches can mean different things to different people. Like if you watched every one of these, you'll probably feel like us, which is, it's pretty good. But we've seen a lot of these. But I imagine if this was the only Ring of Honor show you bought or went to for this 4-month period, this might have been one of your favorite things on the show just because you did see, a huge, spots. If you might have not seen that Necro Butcher gets put on 2 back-to-back chair spot before, you got to see, Nate Webb do a big flying move from the top turnbuckle through a table on the floor. You got to see crazy barbed wire and blood and all that stuff. So, yeah, I enjoyed it. Matt, my big pet peeve with this match, though, is something we've seen a lot, which it comes before the match starts, which is Ring of Honor in this feud teased Necro Butcher versus Joe 17 times, and they never give it to you. And I know we got 2 times before in IWA Mid-South, but the fact that they even had it announced on one show and they just did it over, the fact that they keep going back to they had Joe and Necro do the standoff again. I don't remember what my thoughts were at the time, but I have to imagine my thoughts were at the time they're teasing this so often it has to be happening. It never happens in Ring of Honor,
and you don't really even get Joe versus Necro in Cage of Death because Joe is out, I think, before Necro comes out for that match.
It just really surprises me that they tease it so much and then they never do it. But now it's intermission. Dave Prazak's backstage where he's joined by the Briscoes. Jay says their number one goal is still winning the tag titles, but they're also pissed off at Kenta for getting involved in their business last night when he defended Roderick Strong when they attacked Roderick after the match he had with Kenta. They tell Kenta to man up, so Kenta gets added to the man up list.
I should save this comment for later, but on this DVD, they have the Briscoes do this exact promo 2 times. They have them do it here before the Kenta attack, and then they have them say basically the exact same thing later after the Kenta attack. It's weird to do that.
Yeah, clearly the Briscoes push is on, but yeah, it was one extra promo segment, but clearly, they give him a win. They want him to do a big run-in in a major match later, all that stuff. But yeah, they're doing 2 of the same promo, basically. But that brings us to the first match back from intermission, the Ring of Honor Pure title match. Nigel McGuinness defeated Homicide, successfully defending the title, and he defeats Homicide by countout in 17 minutes, 46 seconds. This match was good. but something was missing for me. A lot of this match is Nigel going after Homicide's arm, which is enjoyable enough. They good sound technical wrestling, but we don't really get a lot of use of the pure rules. There's a count out tease earlier, and then of course the count out finish. But other than that, each guy only uses one rope break. That's not really a factor in the match. It's enjoyable enough, this match, moment to moment, because these guys are such professionals. But I just kept looking for that thing that was going to put its stamp on the match to give it some kind of identity. Never really gets there, except again, the count finish I thought was novel. And the count finish, I will say, is one of the better executed count finishes I've ever seen in wrestling, where it's a classic Nigel pure title reign cheap win, where they tease it earlier, where Nigel puts Homicide through a table and Homicide gets in at 19. And then later on, at the end of the match, they're brawling outside. And I think they did it really well, where Nigel's kind of desperately Homicide's really beating Nigel down, and Nigel's now desperately holding onto Homicide's feet as they're at the entranceway, doing everything he can just to get the double count out and retain the title. Homicide desperately fights him off and then starts running to the ring. And then Nigel at that point ducks under a Homicide clothesline and then races back to him into the ring. And then what makes this finish so good is Homicide then starts running to the ring. He's going to try and make it back to beat out the count. And Homicide's running really fast. The ref is never slowing his count down. And it just times out perfectly where Homicide is on the apron, starting to roll into the ring just as the ref hits 20. It is perfectly, so often count teases, the ref or the wrestler has to slow down awkwardly to make it work perfectly. This, no one slowed down at all, and it just hit absolutely at the perfect moment. He just barely didn't make it, but clearly didn't make it. It was I don't know if I've ever seen a count finish, and just the mechanics of it worked out as well as that. So match itself, just something was missing, but I really did like how they pulled off the finish.
It's interesting. This is one of those rare matches that I like less than you, and especially the finish. I liked a lot less than you did. I wasn't crazy about the execution of it. I think that it was a good idea on paper since it's in line with some of the stuff Nigel's done before, but I didn't like, first of all, that the speed of the count was so clearly different than the speed of the earlier count when they were when they did the table spot and they were waiting for Homicide to get back in. They were counting much slower then. I also didn't like that at the very last second before the Nigel got back in the ring, Homicide hit him with a chair. But then Nigel's just up running to the ring. It didn't make any sense to me. I didn't think it was executed so well. I get what you're saying about the timing of it, but I felt like it was a little bit too contrived for me there. As far as the match itself, I really liked the beginning. I thought the last few minutes before the finish were pretty good, but I thought the middle portion of the match was very rough. Not very smooth at all. Crowd was dead for it. There were some moments where it looked like the guys didn't totally know what to do, and the match almost felt like it fell apart. When they do the timekeeper's table suplex, that's when the crowd gets back into it, and I feel like that's when the match gets good again. But there's this whole part in the middle where I just was like, what's going on? What are they doing? And I thought that killed the momentum a lot. But I did like the beginning and the end. I just thought overall the match was pretty disappointing. One funny thing that happened early during Nigel's entrance, he has a bruise under his eye. It's not quite a black eye, but it's a very noticeable bruise. And someone in the crowd yells at him, "What the fuck happened to your eye?" He was angry at Nigel for having a bruise. And Nigel just ignored the person. There is one other bit that I noticed about this match, and I actually read a review. I think it's by, who wrote this review? I'll look later, but they noticed something. Okay. So at the beginning of the match starts where Homicide attacks Nigel before the instructions for the pure title rules are done being given out. And as part of that, Homicide doesn't hear the part where about the countouts, where there's a 20 count and the title can change hands on a count out. Nigel misses those instructions. So I don't know if that was intentional to play into the finish or just a coincidence. I think it was I don't know how to pronounce his name, but like Mixal's MCXAL. What's the, his reviews? He's written a lot of ROH reviews. You can follow him on Twitter. I'm not sure how to pronounce his name, but that's he pointed that out, and I thought that was a really good point. And that does add a little bit to the cleverness of the finish.
Yeah, I don't know if that was intentional or not, but that is really interesting. I think the one thing you and I can both agree about this match is disappointing when two guys have a good match and then they kind of regress and not for any real good reason, because I think we both they had a match. It might have been in 2004, maybe 2005 in Ring of Honor when like Nigel was just starting to get a little bit of a push.
Midnight Express reunion.
It was like what? Yeah, it was one of the first like significant matches Nigel got, and I think that match was clearly better than this one. So it's kind of disappointing that like 2 years later they can't at least get to that level. The
dynamic was different. They were trying to do more. I think that's I think the goals were different. I think that's probably what changed the quality of the match.
But if you do want to see a better Nigel Homicide match, definitely that's one to check out. So anyway, Dave Meltzer, we'll get to this is when we start seeing the bottle. So Dave Meltzer wrote in the Observer, fans hated the finish to this match, but that was expected as the idea was Homicide flipped out and threatened to quit. The negative from TNA was that fans started pelting the ring with garbage and plastic water balls at this point. Poor TNA taking a lot of flack here. But that's what we see. So I'll just, the segment itself. After the match, the crowd starts throwing things in the ring. They start loudly chanting bullshit. Homicide proceeds to have a classic Homicide tantrum. He throws chairs, tears off one of the ring skirts. Adam Pearce gets in the ring and tries to calm Homicide down to no avail. Instead, Homicide leaves to the crowd. Dave Prazak tries to stop Homicide as Homicide's about to leave through the entrance door. And Prazak's asking him, what's your deal, man? What's your deal? And Homicide says, this company's done nothing for me. Fuck this company. And he proceeds to leave the building. And then, Matt, there's this great moment. It might be the image for the show. I don't know.
I think I know what you're going to say, and I was thinking the same thing.
There's a great moment where the camera peeks through the open door to the outside to try and find Homicide, and we see a middle-aged man is just standing there outside the building. He sees the camera, and he immediately moves to get away from the camera. Like, this man did not want to be filmed. He's just like, whoop. Yeah. I wish we could use a GIF as our thumbnail. Yes, I said GIF. What of it? But this is a good little bit of storytelling, I would say, of building up the idea of Homicide has said he has to win a Ring of Honor title before the end of the year or he's going to leave, and he always feels like he's getting screwed. And this is another match where it perfectly plays into Nigel McGuinness's existing gimmick because he always wins in screwy ways like this. And so for Homicide to then be on the receiving end of that and just to feel like, God damn it, like this company keeps cheating me out of things. Even though technically it wasn't that really a dirty finish. He just lost by count. Listen, I don't really think that Homicide has that much of a beef here. I mean, I don't really feel like Nigel cheated that much, and Homicide hit Nigel with the chair. So, I get that Homicide's frustrated, but I don't think this is a really strong example of Homicide being screwed. Yeah. But this is the cliffhanger before Cage of Death. This moment right here. Yeah. Yeah, especially with the Adam Pearce being the guy as the interim, commissioner trying to talk about. I mean, all that will come to a head at the end of the next show. But even if this wasn't really a big screw job, it's certainly one of those finishes that the Homicide character would consider a screw job because the Homicide character gets mad at a lot of things. Yes. So, right. There was one point in the match where Nigel kicked out and Homicide teased that he was going to attack Todd Sinclair. And, he got really, really mad, but he didn't because he was controlling himself. There were actually a lot of spots early in the match where Homicide was about to punch Nigel and then did a wrestling hold. So that was the good stuff. That's why I like the early part of the match, but just that middle portion just dragged it down a lot for me. Well, that brings us to our semi-main event. Kenta defeats Austin Aries via pinfall in 20 minutes, 50 seconds after it's the go to sleep. So obviously this is one of the big selling points of the show. We disagreed somewhat on the Roderick Strong Kenta match. What do you think about this one? Obviously this is another big match for Kenta. I feel like there's a diversity of opinion about this match. It's definitely the match that Kenta's been in so far that has the least
weighty story to it. It doesn't have like deep psychology, but I thought that it was so action packed and everyone was so on point that I really liked it a lot. Like, I thought it was a great match and better than the Roderick Strong match. The main psychology of the match was that they reversed each other's moves. They had each other scouted. That was really it. But other than that, the real draw of this match was just they're hitting each other hard. They're doing a lot of cool moves. They do fast mat wrestling to start, kind of amateur style. They both slap each other on rope breaks to make statements early. They have a slap fight early. Aries does some Japanese arm drags and then they kind of slow it down a bit. We already early on we have Aries blocking a Kenta strike, hitting an STO and a power drive elbow. There's a spot where Aries goes for a shoulder block from the apron through the ropes, but Kenta avoids it, hits a bunch of very hard kicks. I really love Kenta's kicks in this match, even more than usual. And then Kenta does a stomp off the top rope across Aries' back with Aries kind of leaning over the middle rope. I like that. Kenta does a kick to the chest that sends Aries, right over, and then Kenta slows it down. I really like Kenta's camel clutch that he does here because besides just doing a camel clutch, he's like moving his arms back and forth, almost like raking Aries' face in the process. At one point, Kenta blocks a sunset flip with a really hard slap to the face. Aries actually does his headstand out of the head scissors with Kenta lying on his stomach, which is a different variation. And, obviously Aries, there's nothing for Aries to drop kick from that position, but just a nice little variation of something he usually does. They go outside for a minute, do some guardrail stuff, but then they go back in the ring, have a strike exchange. It's very hard hitting. They trade big boots to the face, which Kenta wins. At one point, Kenta does his outside in stomp with the back kick, which goes better than it did the night before in the Strong match. If you remember, he did that spot in the Roderick match and kind of misses it. This one he hits pretty flushly. I thought Aries actually stepped up his kicking game in this match because he's not really known for his kicks, but he hit some pretty hard kicks here too. They have another mid-ring slap fight and then more Kenta kicks, and Aries catches one of the kicks, does the shin breaker back suplex combo, and then goes right into his corner drop kick for a 2 count. I thought that was a really great sequence from the strike battle into this corner drop kick. So then Kenta puts Aries in almost, I guess I would call it the Shattered Dreams position and hits his own running drop kick and then teases another, but instead just slaps Aries really hard and Aries falls to the mat. We get some more of their signature spots. Eventually, Kenta goes for his swinging DDT, but Aries drops him to the floor, hits the heat-seeking missile, which I don't know if you noticed, but Prazak has stopped calling it by that name. You haven't heard that term in a while. It's just the tope to the outside. Aries goes right to the top rope when they get back in, but Kenta stops him with a leaping kick. He goes up top, knocks Aries down into the Aries knocks him down into the Tree of Woe and hits like a Tree of Woe drop kick, then a kick to Kenta's back, then a hanging neck breaker. Kenta blocks a Finley roll, hits a bridging German suplex for 2. Kenta hits a tiger suplex with a bridge for another 2 count. Then Aries ducks a Busaiku knee, hits a roaring forearm and a lariat, gets a 2 count off that. Kenta avoids a brainbuster, so Aries switches course and then hits the Finley roll, goes up top, but Kenta does the leaping Falcon Arrow, gets a big near fall that the crowd goes nuts for. Aries actually reverses the go to sleep into a so-so crucifix bomb, probably the weakest reversal spot of the match, but it was a cool idea to reverse that into that move. And Kenta keeps countering the brainbuster. Aries avoids a German suplex, punts Kenta, then hits the brainbuster, gets a 2 count off that. Kenta avoids the 450, hits the Busaiku knee, hits his strike combo, a second Busaiku knee, and then the go to sleep, and gets the win. So, I mean, you could hear from that recap, just tons of reversals, tons of moves. I could see why somebody might think this match just didn't have a lot of substance to it, but I just thought it was so entertaining. And I really thought Aries stepped up his striking game here to keep up with Kenta. And I just thought it was paced really well. It wasn't too long. The crowd was hot. I really, really enjoyed this.
Oh, Matt, we really disagree on the Roderick Strong Kenta match, and we completely agree about this match. For the first 2/3 of this match, I was enjoying it, but it wasn't quite connecting to me, which seems like it was a theme on this undercard. It felt more like the things you said that people could criticize this match about, right? Like, it felt like true wrestlers trading all their normal signature moves. And I know you're thinking, well, Trevor, isn't that all wrestling? And well, yes, but I think the magic of wrestling is it's the unique things opponents bring out of each other, be it like stories or elements of their characters or personality or just how their offense meshes. And I wasn't getting in the first 2/3 of this match much apart from them doing their moves to each other. Like, yeah, Aries was responding to Kenta's prickish stiffness and kind, which was cool, but that's kind of a story of a lot of people who wrestle Kenta, because Kenta kind of brings that out of you by being such a stiff, angry asshole. But basically, what I wrote my notes was up to this point, I was hearing a lot of notes, but I wasn't hearing a song, which is a very pretentious thing to write, which I then wrote, man, just to kind of cover for myself in my own notes, because that's how insecure I am.
I'm gonna have to agree with you. That is a pretentious thing to write.
But
wrestling is jazz, man.
But then there's a level you can go to in terms of action where on just a simple dumb level of cool moves that are cool, it overwhelms all of that. And I think they got to that in the final third. But more than that, I think that's when they did start to find their song, Hep Cats. They started finding all the, like you mentioned, all these cool ways of their offense fit together like puzzle pieces. All the things you mentioned. So like you said, like Kenta's big tornado DDT where he lands on the apron and kind of just drops the guy first over the top rope. Like by Aries countering that and sending Kenta flying to the floor, it sets him up perfectly for the heat-seeking missile, which he always does. You know, when Kenta does the jump up to the top rope Falcon Arrow, which he does in a lot of his matches, he doesn't just do it. He waits to do it when Aries does his whole Finley roll, I'm going to jump to the top turnbuckle move that he usually does. And then, like you mentioned, the go to the sleep into the crucifix. I like the idea that they clearly thought before this match, oh, like there's a lot of ways where our biggest moves kind of like naturally link into each other's stuff. And they like explored all of that in the back third of the match. And the match just on a big dumb two guys doing really fun, explosive offense to each other. It just works. And I got to the point where by the end, I was just like, yeah, this is a great match. Even if it does another match that really is devoid of a lot of psychology and story in some ways. And I feel like the crowd kind of must, in some ways, maybe they agreed with me, because at the start of the match, they're really hot. In the middle, they kind of quiet down. They're still watching intently. And by the end, they're fully back and doing "this is awesome" chants. Like, that was kind of the way I felt in this match, where I kind of was in the middle, kind of like, oh, this is good, but and then by the end, I'm just like, well, you've won me over. This is great. And I would agree. I think this, even though I like the Roderick Strong Kenta match more than you, I think this is better than the Roderick Strong Kenta match. I would put this at like 4.25 stars if I had to give it a star rating. It's just a bigger feeling match. Like, I feel like the Strong Kenta match had more of an identity in that I like the idea that Strong is like Ring of Honor's resident hard hitter, and he's taking on one of the hard hitters in all of wrestling. But I feel like even though this match didn't really have even a story on that level, they did more in this match. They went further, and by the end, I felt like they were just trying to mesh better. And it's just the more exciting, bigger, for lack of a better term, feeling match. And one other thing, did you notice too, is, you know, Aries is hitting Kenta hard. You mentioned that, you know, he's responding in kind. But, like, I feel like even though I didn't feel like Kenta was hitting Aries that much harder, everything Kenta does just feels stiffer. I feel like part of that's probably, like, the aura of Kenta at this point. Like, Kenta hitting – I feel like I could watch Kenta, like, kick a guy and watch another 5 wrestlers kick a guy just as hard, and Kenta's kick would still feel harder to me as a home viewer. There's just something about the anticipation now, knowing that's who Kenta is.
Also, there's a difference in the sound, like the sound of the kick. Like, a hard Kenta kick sounds different than a hard Aries kick. Like, it's just like, it sounds like a thud versus like a thing that's designed to elicit a cool sound for, you know what I mean? Like it's just
Yeah.
different. Like, I mean, part of it is also like that's Kenta's thing and that's not Aries' thing. And Aries was sort of like stepping out of the norm to do these stiff kicks, whereas like that's what Kenta was all about.
And the fact that he's just going full bore 1 week after, he was basically knocked out in that in-your-face match. Wild. And so one thing we didn't talk about, which ends up being, for at least Dave Meltzer, the big story of this match, was there's a big dueling "Let's go Kenta, let's go Aries" chant that goes on, I would say, for 5 minutes, like 5 minutes straight. And after the first minute or two, it's probably like maybe a sixth of the crowd. So it's a small portion of the crowd chanting back and forth, and the rest of the crowd's like done with it. They're just watching the match, and it keeps going. And it gets to the point where there are people in the crowd start chanting "shut the fuck up" at them, and that gets them to shut up. Dave Meltzer went on a big ol' rant, man. We'll go to the Observer. Dave wrote, "There was a dueling "Let's go Kenta, let's go Aries" chant that went on for 5 minutes. Then others in the crowd started a 'shut the fuck up' chant. Maybe we should post on the doors at Ring of Honor shows the rules for fan behavior, so people who are sad that it's not still 1985 don't have to complain about how fans who enjoy the matches react. City the size of Chicago, there are less than 1,000 people who come to shows like this. It's not WWE. You should be thankful wrestling of this caliber is being presented, and that there are enough people enjoying it at so that it doesn't go out of business, as opposed to complain about the kind of people who are keeping it alive, not behaving to someone's outdated specified standard that you should behave like it's 1975 at a wrestling match in 2006. It's a lot better than the alternative of guys busting their ass at a WWE show to no reaction, since the people don't think they're important, since they've never been on television." So, boy,
Dave is reading a lot into those chants. The funny thing is, being live at a lot of shows, like, I'm certainly not somebody who approves of chanting "shut the fuck up" at people who are just chanting for the wrestlers, but I don't necessarily always correlate those dueling chants with people being into the match. I think I've been to a lot of indie shows where people do dueling chants, and then when they're not doing those chants, they just don't react to anything. You know what I mean? Like, they're just like, they're having these dueling chants and then they're quiet. So it's almost like they're chanting for the sake of chanting as opposed to because they're respecting the wrestlers. Again, I would certainly never chant "shut the fuck up," and I'm not supporting that, but I think Dave is assuming a lot about both parties here.
Yeah, and so my theory about my thoughts about chanting in general are, as long as you're not doing something really hateful or cruel in general, or something that's really calling out a specific audience member, I generally feel like you pay money for a ticket, you can chant what you want, and if the wrestlers don't like the chant, it's on them to create a match that gets the fans to stop chanting and doing something else. But I will say, I think Dave went a little hard, because this chant, I don't know if it was quite at this level, but maybe I'm kind of dating myself. I don't know how many of our listeners remember this, but like during this era, there was something that kind of became a clipped thing from a different indie where Super Dragon was wrestling, and there was one fan that would not stop chanting Super Dragon. And he would just chant Super Dragon, like, the match was going for minutes and minutes and minutes until the people were like, stop it, please. And this fan was not, and it started to feel at that point like this fan, he was not doing it because he really loved Super Dragon. It felt like he was doing it because
he wanted attention.
He just thought it was funny or something. And Super Dragon, famously, as Super Dragon likes to do, got in this fan. So even though this fan was chanting for him, and like nearly assaulted this guy. Like, so this didn't quite feel like on that level, but it did start to feel like these fans are doing something just to do it. Like, are they really that into this?
Well, that's what I'm saying. There is the thing of people doing things to get themselves over, for a lack of a better term. And I get why that's annoying. But as far as the only real inoffensive chant that I find really annoying to this day is the "we want tables" chant, just because we've talked about this. I just don't understand it. And I've heard people chant these during just totally random matches, and it's why do you want tables right now? Watch the match. It doesn't make any sense. And obviously that's not a problematic chant or anything. It's just annoying to me personally.
I especially hate that in any match where they're already doing things that are more violent than a table break.
Yeah.
And they're still asking for tables. some matches, like, guys are bleeding. They're like putting sharp objects in each other's head. They're like throwing around chairs and stuff. And then people are still like, we want to see you go through a thin piece of particle board. It's like, really? Like,
yeah, why? That's my always my question. Why do you want to see that so bad?
I wonder do you think any fans now, since so many indies have had to shift to using doors instead of tables, do you think anyone chants we want doors? At that point, is the promoter missing a great opportunity of just playing like Light My Fire over the house speakers in a really goofy joke that only would appeal to you and me, and probably just me?
Let's hope that we get there to the We Want Doors chants, and then we can hate those chants too. It'll be great.
So one thing I want to mention too, a little cute moment. So before the Roderick Strong Kenta match on the last show the night before, the fans were chanting like break his back, Roddy, or whatever, and Kenta like looked around and rubbed his back. And tonight, when the crowd's chanting Austin Aries before Aries even comes out, Kenta puts his hand over his eyes and mimes that like he's looking around for Aries. So I like that Kenta's being very kind of playful both these nights. I thought that was cute. And also I think it's good to know, like, Gabe really put Kenta over huge. Like credit to Gabe, there are some bookers that they would be more worried or they would have too much of an ego about putting guys over their guys. You think about how they've booked Kenta since he started in Ring of Honor. He comes in, instantly he main events Final Battle, and he defeats Low-Ki, who, granted, was not long for this Ring of Honor world, but like one of the major Ring of Honor stars still, one of the legends, beats him clean. Then you have Kenta come back, team up with Marufuji, wrestle Samoa Joe and Bryan Danielson, probably the two biggest stars, I would argue, in Ring of Honor history, beats them. Then you have him come back, three-way non-title match, again, Danielson and Strong, not only beats them, beats Danielson, the champ, clean. Then you have him face the tag champions, Strong and Aries, in back-to-back singles matches, beats both of them clean. Like, that is that is basically, he did not, build solid. Like, Gabe instantly was like, I'm going to book this guy in the biggest matches. I mean, the one match he's holding back that he will get to is Danielson Kenta solo.
Well, that's really, why he's putting Kenta over so big, because he's building to that match.
Yeah. But I feel like some bookers, like, it's such a simple thing, but I feel like so many bookers in wrestling history do not do that good, simple booking. We're just going to book this guy strong as hell. We are going to book almost every dream match you want to see right off the bat, and we'll save one for the end,
Yeah,
and
it's a good way to go. I think pretty much everyone was satisfied with Kenta's run in ROH at this point.
Yeah. So after the match, the Briscoes run in, they attack Aries, and unlike the last night where they just attacked Strong, they attacked Aries and Kenta now because Kenta helped Strong in the attack the night before. Roderick Strong, speaking of him, makes the save and then chases them away, and then Strong raises Aries and Kenta's hands, both of them, to a big ovation. Please come back, chance for Kenta. So a very successful weekend for Kenta. And that brings us to the main event, the Ring of Honor World Title match. Bryan Danielson successfully defends the title when he defeats Colt Cabana, but unlike last time, it does not go 5 minutes. This time, Danielson wins via pinfall in 29 minutes, 40 seconds, almost half an hour with a small package. I felt like, Matt, this match was kind of the opposite of the last one, where it did have that music. I'm just going to keep saying that now. But it was
bebopping and scatting all over the place.
It was big and honking. But Danielson, he almost always has this music. I would say, in a sense, well, it's fascinating to watch Bryan Danielson during this era. It's something I noticed watching this match, where if you watch Danielson in this era, more than most wrestlers I've ever seen, he's always constantly adjusting things, tweaking things, adding new ideas, adding moves, taking moves out. Like, he's been doing this recently and before this match, but he does it in this match as well, where he got the I have till 5 referee spot really over, right? Where, he holds a move, the guy gets to the ropes, and he holds it till 4, goes I have till 5. That bit got over big. And then now on the show, and a couple of other recent ones, he started to shift it where the first time the crowd expects him to say it, and they're starting to say it, he tells the crowd, like, no, I'm not going to say it. Fuck you. And then later he pulls it out when maybe they're not expecting it. And it's such a Bryan Danielson thing, right? Like, it plays on one hand to his heel character at this point, which is the idea of, no one can tell me what to do. I'm going to do things when I want to do them on my terms. But it also is a classic, I think, Bryan Danielson, the person in general, which is, if something gets over, you get the feeling like Bryan Danielson almost gets bored with it, or like it's too easy for him, and he'll have to tweak it, or in the case of something like the airplane spin, get rid of it almost entirely. Like, and I feel most wrestlers would never do that.
That's like the artist. That's the artistry of him. Like, it's sort of like certain comedians. Like, there's a school of thought in like comedy where there's some like old school comedians are like, where, you got a routine and you play the hits. And then like the modern comedians, like, I guess, George Carlin's like one of like the early examples of this, is where like you build up a strong like hour, you take it on the road, then you do it for a national audience, and then you dump it and come up with something brand new because you don't want to just repeat yourself. And I think Danielson is kind of the wrestling version of that, where it's like he doesn't want to repeat himself. And obviously he does have signature spots, obviously, like, and he gets same old shit chants in this match, but he's always going to challenge himself to do something at least slightly different because he's, I know it's cliche, but he is an artist when it comes to wrestling.
That's a really good analogy, but it's especially different because a lot of comedians now feel that way. Like,
I think that's become the norm. But like, no Norm Macdonald, pun intended. But at one point it was absolutely not the norm.
Yeah, like even a Jerry Seinfeld for a time, or like Rodney Dangerfield or something, you could probably see them 10 years apart and hear some of the same jokes.
Right, exactly.
And if it was great, they kept it. But I feel like the thing I was just going to say is the thing that makes Danielson unique is wrestling. I feel like almost no one does like that George Carlin modern comedian way. Almost every wrestler I feel like if you find something that works, you're going to do that for the rest of your goddamn life. And Danielson, like even the yes thing, when he went to AEW, he was like, I'm not going to do the yes thing anymore. And maybe part of that was he just felt like
that's really bold for him to just be like, you know what, I'm just not going to do the thing that made me a superstar. Like, that was one of his bolder moves. And then what was really cool was like in that climactic moment in the match with MJF at Revolution, he did it, like he started putting his fingers in the air for the first time in AEW. And it's like, you can, if you withhold it long enough that the moment you bring it back is extremely meaningful. He's so smart about those things.
Yeah, it's like the airplane spin where we watched for a time where he was doing it in like pretty much every match and he got over and then he got rid of it. But then we've seen this, like he still brings it out like in this era very rarely, but like if it's appropriate, he'll bring it out as like a treat. But he will not do it every match. And I don't know how many wrestlers have like willingly like shelved as many like really over spots or finishers or gestures as Bryan Danielson. Even stuff like he got the big long beard over and then he's just like, bored. I'm bored with this. I'll get rid of the beard. Like I'll change it up. He just is an amazing, that's one of the reasons he's one of the greatest of all time. He's just such an interesting wrestler in that sense. And then, or even another example, I was just looking at my notes, like look at finishers. Like most wrestlers, they have two regular finishers. Some wrestlers only have one. Danielson at this point had the cattle mutilation. He had the cross-face chicken wing, which he just started the year before against James Gibson when he won the title. He has the MMA like elbows that result in the ref stoppage that he just started getting over not that long ago. And then he also has a few moves he can occasionally win with. Like very rarely he'll win with a roaring elbow. I think he beat Christopher Daniels recently, in this timeline with it. The Regal Plex, whatever. And at this point he has all these moves, including one that he's just again starting to get over with MMA elbows. And on this match, in this show, he decides, you know what? I'm going to start getting over the small pack. I'm going to bring back the small package as a finisher. Like only Bryan Danielson would be like, I have like 5 or 6 over finishers. That's not enough. What I'm going to pick? The small package. Like just, and I guess the thing that really, I think before I get to the rest of the match and end this love fest of Bryan Danielson, guess what folks? Bryan Danielson's a good wrestler. I feel like so many wrestlers, and I don't mean this as a criticism at all. I think this is a sensible way to look at it. I think most wrestlers, they look at wrestling as every night, what can I do to do tonight that will get over with the fans, that will get a pop, that will make the fans happy. And that's the job. And they probably get some enjoyment out of that. And I'm sure Danielson considers that a lot too. But there's a bunch of things you see from Danielson where more than most wrestlers, I feel like he's trying to answer the second question, which is what's going to be fun for me tonight personally? Like I feel like Danielson does things where it's like maybe that I could do something that would get more over with the fans or something that would make this easier for me to like entertain the fans. But you know what? It's more fun if I do this different thing. And I feel there's so few wrestlers that probably think that way, which is just amazing.
But then in the end, that makes it more fun for the fans too.
Yeah, it does. But I don't think I don't think many wrestlers at all think that way. I don't think wrestlers have that kind of artistic kind of like when you watch Bryan Danielson have a match, sometimes it feels like you're watching a guy play, like in a good way. Like he's just having fun and kind of dicking around like in a real fun way. So anyway, this match, if you go back to Danielson being like the guy who's about the music, not just the notes, the little things and not the moves, like improving in the moment. It's stuff like last night, Matt, we saw on the last show 3 weeks ago for us in podcast time, we saw the three-way Danielson, Jacobs, Whitmer, where Jimmy Jacobs' nose starts bleeding, and organically in the moment, Danielson starts doing a move he's done occasionally where he grabs the guy's nose and then like slaps the nose while he's holding on to it. And he does it a bunch, and because it organically came up in that match. This match, one night later, it's probably still on Danielson's mind. He starts doing it to Colt all the time, and eventually Colt reacts organically to it, where he starts grabbing Danielson's face, and it becomes this little organic thread in the match where throughout the match they're like both grabbing each other's face during the match and kind of digging at it to break holds. And it's like, that's the kind of stuff I love about wrestling where it does feel like more about moves, where Danielson had this little thing that came organically the night before. It's on his mind, so he decides to do it again. And Colt is a point for this night. It's like, I'll start playing into that then. Fine, I'll start doing it. And to me, that's what makes wrestling fun. And I like that stuff. Wrestling doesn't have enough of it. And then, but if this match is missing something, it's missing a little bit of what the last match had, which is just the big, huge, dumb, fun action thrills. There's some of that. Don't get me wrong. The final 5 minutes are pretty damn exciting, and they trade the big stuff in the way you'd expect. But this is a match that's almost half an hour, and a lot of this is one of those very slow building Danielson matches that you know from very early on it's going to go long. A lot of the early stuff doesn't necessarily feel essential. It feels like kind of Danielson. That the way Danielson matches can do sometimes, where it feels like he's kind of finding the story. I'm going to wrestle around until I find something that kind of catches my fancy, and then we'll take the match in that direction. I like the Colt stuff here. I thought Colt did a really good performance. He's super confident here as the match starts, and he's just so over the top in his pandering to Chicago. He's referencing so many Chicago landmarks, yelling out loud. He's like, we're going to go to the Wiener Circle and get a hot dog after this. Like, he's just over the top, hometown baby
driving
face.
Down Lakeshore Drive and just cruising.
Yeah, he's like referencing every Chicago thing he can. And the first 10 minutes of this match, pretty relaxed paced technical wrestling. They nicely, slowly ratchet up the action from there. It's entertaining because these two are really good at what they do, but it's not always like a pulse-pounding, thrilling moment. But overall, I thought this was on the border of very good and great. I would go like 3 3/4 to a 4-star match, which for Danielson, that's like the low end of what I would say from Danielson in this era, but I still really enjoyed it. One thing I will say I'll end on is I did think they had kind of a bit of a missed opportunity here, because this whole match, the whole story of this match, it's playing off of the match that they had before, which was the one that Colt lost in 5 minutes. And obviously, very rarely in wrestling in general, especially in Ring of Honor, does a world title match end in 5 minutes on a flash pin. And I thought they could have played on that more. They don't really do a lot of quick flash pin tees or anything like that.
I think they did the one backslide that, like at the 5 minute mark, that Colt kicked out of, and like that was the big reference.
Yeah, and I love that. And they did that again. When I was looking at the time, it was right around the 5 minute mark, and I don't know how many people caught it, because I don't even think commentary really calls attention to the timing on that.
But no, they did. They mentioned it, because then like a minute later, they're like, "Oh, and now we have hit the 6 minute mark, so Colt has surpassed the previous match."
Yeah, so I was just wondering, like, did they call attention to it when he did the backside? Like, oh, he could have beaten him right at the same time he beat him last time. But apart from that, they don't really do any flash pins or something. And I thought that would have been really neat. I felt like you could have made some hay teasing a lot of those early on, but they really don't. But overall, I really like the end too, because Danielson pulls out the small package. But I always like when a guy gets like the win on
he pulls out the small package. Never mind.
Oh my god, the way he pulls out his small package for everyone to see.
This was a real honkin' match. All right, anyway, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to say, the way he pulls it out, I always love when a guy wins on a flash pin to do it this way, where Colt is completely dominating the match at the end. Like, he's hitting all his moves. The momentum's all on his side. He hits his big finisher, the Colt 45, and then as he covers, Danielson turns it into the small package. I love that, because it's one of those things where it's a clean win for the heel, but it still almost feels like he got lucky, even though he didn't really get lucky. It just feels like, almost like, if anything, Matt, it's something I have a lot of experience with. It's a desperation small package. That's something I say in my life a lot.
Yeah. Yeah, so for me, the one thing that I noticed about this match, like whatever you want to say about the quality, I don't know that I can ever think of a match I've ever seen that was like this match. In the sense that like this was like they tried to do an epic length world title match, but also work in a lot of comedy, which makes this a completely unique viewing experience. And you got to give them credit for that. On the other hand, like you mentioned the missed opportunity from the previous match where he lost in 5 minutes. Obviously, Colt works this match with a lot of drive and intensity and purpose, but do you think it would have made more sense for the character for Colt to be like, all right, I'm going to drop some of the shtick here and just like be more intense? Like, obviously that would have made this match less unique, but do you think that it would have made more sense character-wise?
Yeah, I felt like he kind of tried to find a middle ground, and for the most part, he felt he walked the line.
I don't know. I felt there was a lot of comedy in this.
Well, I even think, like, even the stuff where he's just like, well, the one thing I will say, especially contrasting with that promo that we both liked, but you really liked early, that serious promo where he's kind of really getting up, he's almost a little too loose, I would say, to start the match when we're talking about, like all the references to, like, you know, Wiener Circle, all this stuff, where he's almost a little too like, in the story of the match, he should be kind of tense, right? Like,
yeah, right. Like he should be like, I am all business right now. Like,
and so
but that's just not. I guess that's just not him, you know. But I mean, we did see him like that with the homicide, but he kind of went all the way back to the way he was before.
Yeah, so for me, I would say, to your question, it's not so much that there was comedy in this match, because I feel like I've seen a lot of like serious technical Colt matches that have some of his comedy in it, because that's almost like an undeniable part of Colt. It's almost more just how loose he was. And I don't know if you could do the comedy without being loose, so maybe that's more of an argument for your point, which is He should have just downplayed the comedy. But it was more, I just know the looseness of it, like the story of the match and how he works and how relaxed he is. Yeah, that was kind of not a clean fit for me.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. But like I said, it does make the match interesting to do all that stuff. Like, you know, Colt, you're right, he is loose. Like, and actually, it's very charming right at the beginning. He's walking around the ringside area, and someone in the crowd yells, "I paid to see you," and Colt replies, "I paid to see you," which I think is a great way to respond to that. Yeah, but so like Danielson wrings psychology out of just the littlest things. They do a lot of stuff where, like, they're backing each other into the ropes, and it's like, are we going to do a clean break? And they really sell that a lot. Like, are they going to do a clean break? And they usually do, and then sometimes they don't. At one point, alluding to what I said earlier, they have somebody yell in the crowd, "If Cole loses, we riot." Because, again, that's just on people's minds at this point because of the Cena RVD match at One Night Stand a few weeks earlier. They also do a lot of playing up this thing where Colt does the spot where he like gives Danielson his wrist and he dares him to grab the wrist lock, and they play off that a lot. Like the first time, Colt is able to turn it into his side headlock. Later on, when they do it, Danielson's able to actually get the wrist lock and work it for a while until Colt gets out of it. And then Danielson offers his wrist, and Cabana's like, "That's my trick." And so they do a lot. That first 10 minutes, it's silly, but they get a lot out of a little. Another fun spot that I thought was it was funny because it's a cleverly set up joke, which I don't know if that's typically what you're going for in a massive world title match, but it was. So Danielson does the surfboard, or he goes for the surfboard, doesn't actually get it. He pulls him into the Dragon Sleeper, but the crowd starts chanting same old shit after he does the "I have till 5" thing at the ref. But so then Danielson goes back to the surfboard just to milk the same old shit thing. But this time, in order to prevent Danielson from pulling his arms back, Cabana grabs Todd Sinclair, and Sinclair counts Cabana, 1, 2, 3, 4. And then Cabana, lets go, and he yells in pain, "I have till 5. Ah!" as Danielson pulls him back. And I thought that was a very funny and well done joke that I've never seen before. And again, it's just weird to say that in a big time world title match, but it was a highlight of the match for me. And then they do the thing.
Honestly, that was one of my favorite spots of the whole match. Was probably that moment.
For sure. Then they do that whole thing you were talking about where they're grabbing each other's noses and hitting each other in the nose, which is fun. And then we finally get to the big finish with the fighting spirit. And, one thing that's interesting about Colt is he sort of like protects the Colt 45 almost like Kobashi protects the burning hammer. Like, he very rarely does the Colt 45. I think he might have done it in that last Homicide match, right? And he did it in this match, but he almost never does that move since like the first maybe year or so that he was in ROH. So that's like a really protected move. You don't really see that too often where wrestlers just have these big moves that they just don't do. But that's one of them.
Normally he just goes for the lariat or like roll up pinning combination.
Right, lariat, roll up. Yeah. He does like that reverse Boston Crab that I think he eventually calls the Billy Goat's Curse. Like, and actually there is one spot that I'm like, Cabana fucked up here. Because he does the Billy Goat's Curse, the reverse Boston Crab. And Danielson is like, he reaches the ropes and then Cabana pulls him back. And like Danielson is in that hold and he can't go anywhere. And then Colt just lets go to put it into the cattle mutilation. And that's when Danielson makes the ropes. And it's like, that's a very, like, if you wanted to treat it as a shoot, like, that's a big strategic blunder, Colt. You should have kept on the move that Danielson wasn't able to get out of because by letting go, you gave him the opportunity to escape. It's just interesting. I'm curious to see if that gets played up in the match they have later in the summer. But yeah, this was a good, very good match. I think it's hard to have an absolute classic epic when so much of the match is comedy, but it definitely made for an interesting viewing experience and unlike any other world title match that I've seen.
And it was, in a sense, a very Colt Cabana world title match.
Absolutely.
Like you can't, and for some people that might be a negative, for some people that might be a gigantic positive,
Right.
And like you said, there's nothing else quite like it.
Right. There was just one other spot I wanted to ask you about. Okay. So there's a spot very late in the match where Danielson forearms Cabana and Cabana yells, "Harder! Knock me out!" And I'm like, does that make sense? Like, that's a weird thing to want to have happen to you late in a match when you're trying to win. Like, why would you yell at somebody to hit you harder, like, at that moment in the match? Like, I get, like, you have these mid-match strike exchanges, but this is like a climactic moment and Colt's, like, just yelling at Danielson to knock him out. Doesn't make any sense to me.
Is he just going like Rocky 3 where Stallone to Mr. T where he's trying to do the rope-a-dope like Danielson's going to get tired punching me over and over again.
I don't know. I have it on authority that people in Colt's friends group have not seen Rocky. So I don't know.
But one of his
Colt's
former friends does have
Colt's friends group as of 2006. Let me make it clear.
I do think, though, that one of Prend in a Colt's 2006 friends group nowadays does have experience with people punching him so often that they get tired. Anyway, the Observer had a note about this match. Dave wrote, Cabana isn't as over as Punk in Chicago. Boy, that's a way to start off. But they are using him in the hometown.
What a mean guy.
But they're using him in the hometown #1 babyface role. The last few minutes were really hot, particularly when Cabana used cattle mutilation on Danielson. Cabana also used the series of hard elbows that Danielson has used to win recent matches. Danielson won with a small package, and Danielson then got on the mic and called himself, quote, Mr. Small Package.
Why did they not include that on the DVD? That pisses me off so much.
That's infuriating. And in fact, from a little more detail on that from Chris Vedder's live report from the PW Torch website at the time. He wrote, Cabana grabbed the mic after the match and complained about losing on a cheap roll-up. Dragon told him a win is a win. Cabana challenged Dragon to a best-of-3 falls match on August 26th. Dragon agreed. The stipulation is this is Cabana's last title shot against him. So all this stuff, the Mr. Small Package, the challenge, calling this a cheap win with a roll-up, like none of this makes the DVD, which,
even though they had room on the DVD to add it, it's very interesting that they decided they didn't want to put that on the DVD.
So after the match, the crowd explodes into a mix of cheers and boos. A few fans throw garbage in the ring, so that trend continues on this night. And some, but not, I would say not all the fans, but definitely some of the fans chant bullshit as Prazak says, we need to get out of here. We're going to have a riot on our hands, which I would call
so funny hearing Gabe's voice while Prazak was saying that stuff. He was like,
that had to have been Gabe telling him.
Yeah, it was like first Joe's knee, then homicide, now this, this thing, everything is falling apart before Cage of Death. Like, it's just like, all right, settle down, man.
It was such a cornball sell of a very moderate audience reaction. Like probably the homicide reaction was worse. In a weird moment, and then this is what I was referring to before. In a weird moment, Colt grabs the mic, and we can see he's just about to start to talk, and then they cut away. So he did have something to say. You just never get to see it. But so what we do cut away to is the Briscoe brothers backstage. Mark is wearing a red and the SAT vintage ROH t-shirt. That's from the early days. And Jay says they've had a pretty good weekend going 2-0 and laying out Aries is strong. Mark says they have something for Kenta too. It's time to man up. So like Matt said earlier, basically the same promo we saw earlier. And then we cut to the Ring of Honor students in the building after the show as the ring is being taken down. Bobby Dempsey says they've again requested this promo time to show Shane Hagedorn, their leader, the leader of the students, that he's the biggest loser in the school. Hagedorn mopes with his top of the class trophy as the other students laugh at him for losing 2 nights in a row. Shane says, "Screw you" to all of them. He says he's going to find some better company. He walks away. So that ends our little weekend double shot storyline of the rise and fall of Shane Hagedorn. He has been embarrassed. And then, Matt, we got a really weird thing because normally every Ring of Honor show, at the end of the last segment, which that was, we get a little graphic of the Ring of Honor logo, and that ends the DVD. Ring of Honor is not a Marvel Comics movie. It does not do post, sign off little video clips until this one. On this one, after the logo, we get a weird thing where we see 3 seconds randomly of the Ring of Honor crew backstage saying happy birthday to someone. I can't quite make out who it is.
So here's the thing. I recognize not a single person in this clip. I didn't recognize any of the people saying happy birthday. I did not recognize the person they were saying happy birthday to. You could really even see the person's face. So even if I would have recognized them, I wouldn't know. Did you recognize people in this clip? Because I looked 3 times. I was like, who are these people? It's almost like they, somebody, spliced this in from, a random birthday party that had nothing to do with ROH for all I know from what I've watched.
It really feels like an inside joke where almost even a mistake. It is so random and so short.
Did you recognize anybody, though?
No, I think the person that might be saying happy birthday, he's wearing a hat, so like Matt said, you can't really see his face, but you could see a little bit. I think my instinct was it might have been Adam Pearce, so I looked at what's Adam Pearce's birthday. Adam Pearce's birthday is 6 days after this show. And Chicago is his hometown area, right? So my only guess is maybe Adam Pearce's family or friends or something showed up and gave him an early birthday.
Okay, because I tried to rewind it a few times and I did not. It did not look like Adam Pearce to me, but I guess it could have been.
I mean, don't hold me to that, but that was the best guess I have. But yeah, I didn't recognize anyone either. So that for anyone that actually has the DVD, that's a weird little Easter egg you can look out for. Don't cut it off right when you see the logo. Keep going. You'll see this weird 3-second clip of a birthday party. And that is the end of Chi-Town Struggle. So, Matt, the second half of a double shot. Couple big matches up top, a weird birthday party. What'd you think about the show, Matt?
I mean, I was better than I remembered. I pretty much, other than the pure title match, which I know you did like, I pretty much liked everything. And I, really liked the Kenta Aries match. I thought that the Danielson match was very different. And, for a 30-minute match, it kept me entertained. And the crowd was hot, sometimes too hot. So I thought this was a very good B show. It's weird to call a Chicago show a B show, but this is definitely a B show in the grand scheme of things. And I don't know. I thought it was very entertaining.
Yeah, I thought this was a good show. Maybe the lamp isn't quite as high as some of the big shows we got spoiled on recently, but good stuff on the undercard. And I think it's better than the show the night before in Ohio, in Dayton, because they both kind of have, in some ways, the same draw. Both shows have Kenta in a singles match against one half of the tag team champions, and then a big Bryan Danielson world title match. Also, the draws of both shows. I would say I think I liked the Danielson 3-way from the last show a little more than Colt Danielson here, but I liked the Kenta Aries match better than Kenta Strong, and I liked the undercard on the show better, and I thought the crowd was better. So overall, I think this is the better show of the double shot. And that brings us to the end of the show. So if you want to get in contact with us, ThROH at gmail.com. That's THROH for through. Obviously, we're on YouTube. If for some reason you want to be like explosive dragon farts and watch the podcast there, you don't see video, but you do get to hear us on a browser window, which I guess you could do with different podcasts. Anyway, Twitter.
Trevor. What am I going to do with you?
Twitter at Trevor Dame, at Mayor MGF for Matt. Next time on the show, we'll be covering one of the big ones. This is one of the ones we had circled from the start of the podcast, one of the tentpole shows in Ring of Honor history. Death Before Dishonor for the grand finale to the CZW Ring of Honor feud, the Cage of Death match where big angles are shot, huge spectacle of a match. The CZW fans are in the building one more time. It is considered to be one of the greatest feud enders of the last 20, 25 years.
Yeah, now, Trevor, I know you're basically in the process of signing off, but I do have one more question for you, which is, if you had just watched these DVDs, would you be that excited for Cage of Death? Like, we were all super excited because we were following everything. Like, we were following the news wires and like the website and the message board, and like we were amped for it. But like, did they do much on these DVDs to hype up this match? Because I feel like they don't.
Yeah, you're right. You know, I feel like we've gotten to the point in this feud that a flaw in Ring of Honor is occasionally we get into this with long running feuds where it feels like we've seen the same beat of the story over and over again before the blow off. Like we've seen the same, you know, even Joe getting like wanting to confront CCW and then getting like attacked in his bum knee. This isn't even the first, maybe not even the second time we've seen that in this feud. And I guess with that last thing where Prazak had like, oh, you know, Ring of Honor, like I think the story Gabe was trying to tell on the show is the idea that like Ring of Honor is in disarray heading into the big, so they're the underdogs heading into the Cage of Death match. But I don't feel like they hit it as strongly as they needed to if they really wanted to make that like a big selling point. Cause yeah, like Joe got his knee taken out, but I don't think like Danielson beating Colt Cabana is something to be afraid of. But
not a single ROH wrestler or CZW wrestler cut a promo about this match. Not one.
Yeah, and Chris Hero not even being there, the guy who kind of started this all, you know, that I know he probably had scheduling things, but that kind of hurts it. I would say I would, at this point, if I time traveled back and wiped my memory, after telling Chris Benoit, you know, not to do a few things, what I would say is I would be, although if I had wiped my memory, anyway, what I would say is I would be excited, having seen everything that had come before, for Ring of Honor to go back into Philly to have that crowd atmosphere again. And I'd be hoping they could pull off a great match. I wouldn't be like expecting what we end up getting.
Yeah.
And that excited. And in that sense, yeah, it's a failure because the job of wrestling is for you to have the highest of hopes, especially when you're going to be able to deliver on them.
Yeah. So, I mean, like, again, like I said, I guess the thought process at the time was nobody's just watching these DVDs. Everyone who's watching them is following it online to some extent. They'll hear the buzz. They'll understand through that. And we don't need to do it on DVD, which, you know what? Maybe they were right. I don't know. Watching it back many years later, which I know is not what was intended, you don't really feel the excitement the way that you did when you were following things on the message board way back when.
Well, we'll see if we can recapture the excitement next time when we will be covering Death Before Dishonor 4. That's an episode you should not miss. But you should not miss any episode because, hey, we try hard. We're trying to make you guys happy. Like,
and remember,
aren't we good enough for you?
And remember, Cameo, $1,000. Do it.
Yeah, cameos. So until next time, have a good time. Have a great time.